my podcast since I last read your bio. I said, oops. Hello, Bob. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you making the time.
Oh, my pleasure, Mark. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Very welcome. I think we have a great start here. I was going to ask you how giving back helps you move forward. And you said that's the wrong phrase. Could you explain that a little bit? Because I hadn't heard your explanation before.
Yeah. Now, I hope I said it more politely than that. But yeah, so the term giving back has become a euphemism for charity, for volunteerism, for mentorship, all things that we believe in very much. But the term giving back, I think, is a misnomer because it implies that you took something from someone first and now you're doing the right thing by giving back, right? And I don't believe you can give back when you haven't taken something first, or at least received something first. Now, someone would say, well, wait a second. What about a person who's made a whole lot of money living in a community? They took money from their community and now they should give back. Well, I'm going to suggest they didn't take anything. What they received in payment was in voluntary exchange for what they gave in value, right? And so whenever there's a free market simply meaning no one's forced to do business with each other. In this case, anytime there's a buyer and a seller, there should be two profits. The buyer profits and the seller profits because each of them come away better off afterwards than they were beforehand. So, I think the term giving back seems to come from a place of prosperity. I don't believe it does. I think it comes from a place of lack. It's the kind of thinking that says that for you to earn a lot of money, somebody else has to lose a lot of money, right? And we don't believe that for a moment. We receive to the degree that we first provide immense value to others. So indeed, should you give to the community? Well, sure, if that's congruent with your values, and hopefully it is, absolutely. Should you give charity? Of course. Should you mentor? Should you help? Oh, I would hope so. But I don't call it giving back. We would just probably call it giving or contributing or volunteering or whatever you would like.
How did you discover the power of giving? I mean, before The Go-Giver came out, and maybe even before you started writing it, I'm guessing, was it something in childhood? Did you discover it a little bit later in life? What's the story behind the power of giving for you?
Well, I was very lucky, as was my co-author, John David Mann, that we were both brought up by parents who were very giving people. So they embodied this kind of life. And so we both got to see this firsthand. Now, growing up, you start to see people and into adulthood, you see people doing things in different ways. And some seem good and some seem not so good. And you see people prosper and people not, or you see some people who do things a certain way and they prosper, but it's not sustainable. And you kind of put things together and you see patterns emerge. And what I saw was really that those people whose focus was on providing immense value to others, those were the people who seemed to have success, a sustainable type of success. They also seem to be much more happy in their personal life as well. So that, that's really how that came about. So I think it was a combination of things.
How do you think what's the balancing act between giving and getting? Because it seems like some people could give and feel like they're not getting something in return. Is it something that they're doing or not doing?
Yeah, well, giving and receiving are like breathing out and breathing in. It's not a matter, you can't just breathe out.
Mhm.
You also have to breathe in. It's not one or the other, right? It's both. So we breathe out carbon dioxide, we breathe in oxygen. We breathe out, which is giving. We breathe in, which is receiving. Giving and receiving are really two sides of the very same coin. Now, when someone says, "Well, but I'm giving all the time to people," well, are you giving in the right way? And first, when we say giving, we're not talking about a magical type of thing. You did a good
Mhm.
deed, so you expect to have a Lamborghini arrive in the thing. Well, we're not talking about that. We're talking about giving to the value to the marketplace in such a way that the marketplace understands it to be of value and causes them to want to do business with you. So, so when we talk about value, it's important to understand, I think, the difference between price and value. First of all, price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It
Mhm.
is what it is. Value is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something to the end user or beholder. What is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, or advice, or introductions, or listening, or whatever, that brings so much value to another human being, so much worth, that they will want to be in relationship with you? Here's the key: value is always in the eyes of the beholder,
Mhm.
not what we believe is of value. It's not what we believe they should believe is of value. It's what they believe is of value. So a lot of times when someone says, "Well, I give and I give and I give, but I'm not, receiving anything in return," it tends to come down that you might feel as though you're giving value, but it's value as you understand value, not value as your marketplace does.
So if you're dealing with another person individually or a marketplace as a whole, how do you discover their value and their definition of value so you know what to be able to give? How do you figure that out?
So this is why asking questions is so vitally important, and being able to listen after you've asked these questions and be able to clarify while you're listening. Because remember, as human beings, we tend to come from different sets of beliefs regarding how we see, how we view the world. Okay, I call them belief systems. We could call them our unconscious operating system.
Mhm.
This is a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies, popular culture, what have you. But as human beings, we tend to believe that most people see the world and understand the world basically the same way we do. And it's simply not necessarily true at all.
Mhm.
We see it as we do, they see it as they do. We value certain things, they value maybe different things, but we don't really realize that. So we have to be able to ask questions to discover what it is that they need, what they want, what they desire. That's what selling is: discovering what the other person needs, wants, or desires, and helping them to get it. Right now, on a more general scale, this is a matter of understanding your marketplace. Okay, on a macro level, what is it that basically they need, want, desire? What are their basic challenges that they need to overcome? What are the strengths that they have that they don't maybe even necessarily know they have? And so so there's that little bit of a difference, that you got to know the marketplace as a whole. Your demographics, your psychographics, whatever graphics.
Mhm.
But also, when you're dealing with people individually, you need to be able to go deeper because they're individuals as well.
How do you go deeper? Is it just asking better questions? Because there's
Mhm.
so many people, they just want to talk about themselves and they're thinking about what they're going to say next. How do you go deeper with somebody in a meaningful way?
Well, you ask them questions about themselves that will help elicit the answers that are going to help you to help them. Now, there's different kinds of questions. There are the rapport building questions. That's going to help you establish a relationship with someone. But then there are the discovery questions, and the discovery questions are what are going to help you, as the name implies, discover what they're looking to accomplish. So, uh, so it's a matter of knowing the right questions to ask, which you will do since it's your business. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And you're going to start to know. Now you'll learn it from other people who have also been in the same business and have been successful, but you'll also start to figure out and see patterns. What are the questions that you're asking that really elicit that person, letting you know how to help them? And it all begins with, of course, the know, like, and trust aspect. To the degree that they trust you, that's the degree that they're going to feel very comfortable and safe in opening up to you.
Is there a way to accelerate know, like, and trust?
The way you accelerate it is by focusing totally on them from the very first time you meet them. I often talk about when I started in sales 40 years ago, and I was on the phone doing my prospecting as well as relationship building and selling. And I've often said that, one thing I discovered very early on is that nobody ever hung up the phone on me while they were talking. Okay. It's amazing how that worked. If I'm talking about myself and my great products and services and company, well, they're not that interested. If they're talking about themselves, they're totally engaged. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone who let you do practically all the talking? And if so, didn't you kind of come away from that conversation saying to yourself, wow, what a fascinating conversationalist that person is?
Yes.
Well, sure, that's human nature, right? And so when we ask what I call feel good questions, and these are questions that are not prospecty, they're not salesy, they're not intrusive, they're not invasive. They simply are rapport building questions that make this person feel good about themselves, about the situation, and about you. So if you're talking to someone named Gary who sells copying machines, a great feel good question to ask is how did you get started selling copying machines? Or a little bit more elegant way to say it is maybe, how did you get your start as an office products professional? Now, this is not a particularly clever question or a slick question. In
Hmm.
fact, it's a pretty mundane question when you think about it. How did you get started? But it's a question people love to answer because they're not asked that question by people, right? They're not asked how they got their start, but here's you who they just met, who, if you're like most people, you're just hitting them up about your product or service, but no, not you. You're asking them to share their story. Now, understand, again, nobody does that for that. Their own family has never asked them to share their story. Okay. And
Hmm.
here's you who they just met who wants to focus on them and know about them. Okay. So they're going to answer that question while you actively and genuinely listen. And that right there develops a rapport. Next, asking that person what they enjoy most about their work. That's a feel good question. It elicits a feel good response. What I call the one key question that will separate you, that will distinguish you from the rest, is to ask, Gary, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good potential client for you? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or, to say if you're speaking with Mary, and a great way to frame this question would be to say, Mary, I always love connecting good people with other good people. Tell me, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good, potential client for you? So this is a question that again, has separated you from everyone else they've ever met. But
Hmm.
also the way you've asked the question, the way you framed it, their answer is going to help you to help them, which is the greatest thing you can do. Now, all this begins the trust building process. There's certainly a lot more. There's an entire follow up and follow through,
Hmm.
methodology. But this is how it starts, by focusing on them.
So by focusing on them and accelerating the know, like, and trust factor, if you have a big idea, whether it's starting a business, making the next sale, or hitting a certain number, how do you enroll them to support you? Does it just happen naturally? Do you just move away from the people who don't ask you about yourself? Is there a way to enroll them in a mutually beneficial way? What does that look like as far as
Well,
getting
I, I
involved?
I probably wouldn't even start during that first conversation if you've met them somewhere outside of, if you've met them at a party or some
Mhm.
local function or a charity event or wherever. Now, if it's a prospecting situation, well, that's a little bit different. If you've called them on the phone, or if they've responded to something online or whatever, while sure you go into you begin with the feel good questions to the degree that that's appropriate, you're going to probably get more into the discovery in terms of their needs. Again, this just depends on the situation. What I would absolutely do is follow up the first conversation with a personalized handwritten thank you note to that person, where I would just say, and again, depending upon if this was just somewhere you met at a local event or something, and business wasn't even discussed other than theirs, you discussed theirs, you didn't even bring up yours, because right now that person's not interested in yours. Okay, it's going to be when the know, like, and trust develops. But to send a note card just says, "Hi Dave," or "Hi Mary. Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you. If I can ever refer business your way, I certainly will. Best regards, Bob." Now put it in a number 10 envelope, handwrite it, and you want to use blue ink, which looks more as though it's original than black ink.
Oh, okay.
And then put a hand stamp on it, on the envelope, not a meter stamp, a hand stamp, because you want this coming from a friend. And they open this thing, and the first thing they see is your picture, and people think in pictures, and so they see this, and then right away they see a note. Now instead of it, there's no business card in there. In fact, your information is on here, but it's but instead of it being something where they're expecting to now you ask them to do business with you, all it says is, "Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you. If I can ever refer business your way, I certainly will," or whatever, and so again, this, boom, step two, right? And now, the next thing, you're going to connect online or whatever, but you're going to look to find ways to bring value to them. Maybe comment on some of their posts, or it might be that you send you find out within the conversation with them that something that's of an interest to them, and you see an article in the paper, you cut it out and send it to them, or you see an article, go looking online for an article, print it out, send it to them along with this little note card that just says, "Hey, came across this. I remember you saying you were interested in antiques. Hope you enjoy it," whatever.
Mhm.
All these things. Now, when you can connect them with other people, so all these things it doesn't have to take a long time, by the way. It typically doesn't. Okay. But these are the things that begin to cultivate that know, like, and trust relationship.
Well, once you start to cultivate it, like planting a seed, if you will, and watering it, and you have their attention,
Mhm.
what are the next steps to a deeper relationship? And it won't happen with every person, I realize that. But as far as the people you'd like a deeper, more meaningful relationship with after know, like, and trust just get started, what advice would you have for building that type of deeper relationship?
Well, in terms of a sale, I mean,
A sale and a business relationship, maybe referral source.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you have a product or service that you think they would be interested in, once the know, like, and trust is established, you can always ask them, if they're interested, and you can, at that point, the time is totally appropriate to be able to do that. But let's say that's not the case, because they may not need your product or service at this time. It
Mhm.
might be a product or service that isn't for everyone at every time, but they can still be great referral sources. So it might be a matter of getting together with them over coffee, or what have you, and talking about how you both can support each other, and how you can both refer to one another, and so forth. It just depends on the situation.
So with what we're talking about, have you always been wired? He's mentioned 40 years ago when you started in sales. Were you naturally a giver, or did you discover that?
Well, I mean, I think naturally, I had that inside me. I didn't necessarily know that that's how that's how you build a sales career. Once I figured that out, and I learned that from studying others. Certainly not something that I thought of myself.
Mhm.
I started realizing this is great, because it's very congruent with my own personal values and style. You know, and so then at that point, prospecting for business became a lot of fun, where it wasn't before, because
Yeah.
before I was thinking too much about me and my needs. Once I started realizing that the best way to prospect for new business is by finding ways to bring value to others, it just opened up new worlds.
And even it sounds like, tell me if I'm on point here, with general business networking, even not necessarily immediate prospecting, it sounds like you might be an advocate. Would you say throw out the elevator speech and replace it with questions, or how does that balance out with
Yeah.
talking about
So
yourself?
yeah, so that's a great question. So first, let's look at that. When you first meet someone, and again, I'm going to put this in the environment of some kind of business social function. Okay, so this is not someone who is a prospect for you right now. Okay, that they haven't called in to ask about something. You haven't called them for that. Someone you're meeting for the first time, and you ask them what they do. They're going to probably give you an elevator speech, because
Hmm.
that's what they've been taught to do. Gary, who sells copying machines, when you meet him, he's going to say, I'm vice president of sales and on the street salesperson for Acme Office Products. We sell high-end copying machines that help today's business owner to blah, 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 blah. And he's going to do his elevator speech. Again, that's what he's been taught to do. And we listen respectfully. Now, he's going to say, so what do you do? Not that he really cares at this point, because he probably doesn't. In fact, I'm going to suggest that his level of interest in you and your business at this point of time, it can be summarized in 3 words. He doesn't care. So using this like elevator speech for what you do, I help people buy and sell the perfect home, if you're a realtor, or I help people create and manage wealth if I'm a financial advisor, or we help companies to, whatever. He doesn't care, and it does nothing to distinguish you. I'm going to suggest you just say what it is you do. I'm an accountant with so-and-so, or I'm a realtor with Oceanside Realty, and go right back to him, right? Because again, he doesn't care right now. Now, there's a certain point where when a relationship is established, and by the way, it might be at this particular meeting, 5 minutes later, or it might be a week later or something. But there's a certain point where you need to be able to communicate what I call a benefit statement. This is different from an elevator speech, which tends to still be eye focused and takes a long time. A benefit statement is very you focused and is very short and snappy. So a financial advisor might say, we help people create and manage wealth. Okay. Is very short, sweet, and provides communicates the benefit of what they or someone else. Now, I don't say I help you create, because again, that could make the person defensive, as though I say we help people create and manage wealth. But there's also something else. So when, let's say you're in a situation where this person would really like to refer you to others, okay? I have what I call a how to know statement. And this is a way of helping them to be able to identify a good prospective customer or client. So if you recall, when you said to that person, earlier during that first conversation, how can I know if someone I'm speaking with is a good, prospective client for you? Now, he sells copying machines, so he doesn't tell you about the bells and whistles, but he probably says something like, if you're ever in an office and you notice a copying machine, and next to that copying machine is a waste paper basket, which is filled to the rim and overflowing with crumpled up pieces of paper, that's a good sign that copying machine's been breaking down a lot lately, and that would be an excellent prospect for me. So he's told you how to identify that person, right? So if you're let's say you're a realtor, okay, and this person would love to be able to find you business. They want to look out for you. They're looking, and so let's say you specialize in let's say you specialize in selling very high-end new homes in a certain area of town. And you say to that person, now they know you're a realtor, they kind of know you sell homes, okay? But you might say, if you come across someone or meet someone who is in an executive position or on their way up, a very upwardly mobile person, okay, who is married with children, that would be a great prospect for me, because that's your demographic. That's how you, And so again, you're not telling them about how you sell a home or how you do this or that. You're just helping them to identify someone.
So if I hear you right, you're actually helping people to help you with benefit statements.
That's exactly it. Yeah. In that case, it's the how to know statement. Exactly. Yeah. So that they know, who to identify.
Tell me a little bit more about how can someone craft, if they're listening now, how do you craft a how to know statement? Is there a mini formula or a certain thing to do about focus on them?
Well, for the benefit statement, there's a mini formula. So remember how we help people create and manage wealth. So you start with the end in mind, like Dr. Stephen Covey would say, begin with the end in mind, right? What is it that people want? Well, they want to create wealth, and have it managed so that right? So obviously that starts, and then that's what you do. We help people create and manage wealth. In the, when my first book, Endless Referrals, the publisher wanted to call it networking for success. Well, aside from the fact that's kind of a snoozer, it doesn't really provide a benefit. Well, what's the benefit? The people who'd read the book wanted referrals, endless referrals. So I said, let's title it Endless Referrals. That's the benefit, right?
Mhm.
The subtitle was Network Your Everyday Contacts into Sales. So that was kind of a mini benefit statement. So you begin with the end in mind. As far as crafting a how to know statement, well, you just ask yourself, what is it? Let's go back to the Gary, the copying machine salesperson, right? So what did he do? He showed you the perfect way to identify someone that would be a client, potential client, right? So what was it about that? First of all, if you see a copying machine that's kind of broken down, well, first, if you see a copying machine, you know that they're in the market, that they use copying machines, but this one's kind of broken down, right? The waste, and how do you know? Well, the waste paper basket's filled with crumpled up pieces of paper.
Yeah.
So that's how, boom, there's the key right there. So if you're in an office somewhere and you notice a copying machine that's filled with a waste paper basket next to it, filled to the rim and overflowing with crumpled up pieces of paper, there's a good shot. It's not a guarantee, but it's a good shot that copying machine might be breaking down, and who knows if they're in the market. So again, there's no guarantees for it, but you can create the environment where you're placing the odds more in your favor that person's going to be able to help you identify that right person.
So if I hear you right, it's less about what you do, which is where people get lost. And
Uh-huh.
it's more about who you can help in describing the personality or the problems they're facing. Would that be right?
You got it perfectly. Yes.
So it's having that conversation, asking the right question, and giving them a pain point that they can recognize. Because explain copiers, I imagine someone could do that all day long,
Right.
and I'm just going to be more confused than I was when we started talking.
Exactly. Most of us, unless we're hardcore engineers who want to know exactly how everything works, right? By and large, we just want to know. We want to know it's going to make good copies and it's going to be dependable, and that it's affordable and so forth, or whatever other areas that we need to know. But yeah, you're exactly right.
So it's about another way to say it would be it's about the problems that you solve for people.
Absolutely. Sure. The people who solve problems are the ones who create value.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. When it comes to giving, what is the most important thing you want to leave people with of why they should be givers?
Well, I mean, I think it comes back to something a mentor of mine probably 38 years ago said, because I'd been in sales for a couple of years and I started in sales 40 years ago. So I guess that's when it would have been. And I was in a sales slump at the time, and my focus was really off. I mean, it was all about me. It wasn't about, and he took me aside and he just said, Burg, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target, he said, is serving others. Now, when you hit the target, he continued, you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money, and you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It isn't the target itself. Your target is serving others. And what that really said to me, Mark, was this, that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Great salesmanship is never about the product or service, as important as those are. That's not what the sale is ever about. Great salesmanship is about the other person. It's that person whose life you are trying to add value to. We could actually even say it's about that person whose life is better just because you are part of it. And I think when we approach sales from that foundational premise, now we're really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
That is a beautiful way to end. Thank you so much for being gracious with your time, Bob, and sharing some awesome advice.
My pleasure, Mark. Thanks so much for having me on.